My text to my friends was, this one, and I hope they don't make it.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good
morning.
Diane. Alberta is under the weather, so I get to chair today. I'm Ann Valentine. Thank you all. It is amazing to be in person. Missing, of course, Libby and Lori, who are online, but so excited to see everyone in person, and it's nice to have this chance to be together 2 years ago at this meeting. Dave, this was, I think, the first time I met you, but also like the last public in-person meeting I attended. So hopefully we are emerging out of that. So I think this is my official call to order. And next, I think we're going to have our hosts say a few words. We have our Noblesville Mayor to greet us, Chris Jensen.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It is so great to have you in Noblesville. I was telling Maya that we ordered this beautiful snow globe-like weather for you. Normally it's sunny and 75 in Noblesville, but we thought with artists, you guys might like some more scenic, view here. So it's awesome to be with you. I love the Indiana Arts Commission. So in my prior life, at one point in time, I was executive director of the State's Bicentennial Commission in 2016. I worked with Lewis a lot during that time. The arts community was a huge supporter of the Bicentennial, certainly helped tell Indiana's story through arts in a major way in 2016. So I have a huge appreciation for all that you guys do and what you promote on a daily basis in your everyday life. Ailey McGill will tell you at one point in time I was on the board of Nickel Plate Arts here locally, which hopefully some of you got to experience over the last 24 hours to learn about Nickel Plate Arts and what they do. I laughed when I was on that board because I am the furthest thing from an artist, but I really appreciated Nickel Plate and their willingness in every arts organization to bring in non-artists to bring that point of view. And I'm a father, I'm a husband, and my kids love art. Actually, this week we were at Nickel Plate on Wednesday night because my kindergartner had a piece of artwork there featured. So I was there with about half of the community as well, walking through there. I said that was a perfect campaign line off to lots of people to see there that day. But just an incredible activated space on South 8th Street. Noblesville, really in Hamilton County, is really the cultural arts hub. We are here in we're the state's 7th designation as a cultural arts district. We're incredibly proud of that. The city's commitment to the arts has only grown over the last several years. We now give, I think, $100,000 on an annual basis to Ailey and her team as a grant to help foster arts here locally. That's a big step. And if you take a look at the not-for-profits that Noblesville directly supports financially, I would say probably is the top not-for-profit that we support because we know it's so important. Our downtown is authentic, it's unmatched. Noblesville really is a city for everyone. I laugh because other communities in Hamilton County are building pretty incredible spaces. Downtown Carmel, Jim Brainerd's done an incredible job. Mayor Fadness with kind of his tech hub down there, but they're all really doing things that Noblesville's done a long time ago. In fact, 200 years ago next year, and built this historic downtown square. They'll never be able to touch that. They'll never be able to recreate that. They certainly can't build a river flowing through their downtown. So we have some pretty natural amenities here that are unmatched in their authenticity and that we're going to continue to preserve and protect while Noblesville still continues to grow. We are officially the 10th largest city in the state of Indiana. We're only 600 people in 2020 behind Lafayette, so I actually think we're probably the 9th, but if you see the Lafayette mayor, just say you're the 10th, and it's fine. We're in the top 10, and that's a big change for Noblesville. Noblesville still has a very hometown feel to it. We still have, you can go to Nickel Plate Arts on a Friday night and see half your neighborhood, and and so you have a very hometown feel, but it is a growing community. It's a wide city. It goes from Westfield all the way over to exit 210 and Ruoff and Hamilton Town Center. So we have a little bit for everybody, but arts is really kind of what anchors us. So on behalf of our city, thank you for all that you do across the entire state of Indiana to tell the art story, to tell Indiana's story. We certainly want to be a part of that going forward, and we welcome you here at any point in time. And just thanks for your commitment to telling the story of arts in Indiana, and let us know how we can support you going forward. So thank you.
And I'm Ailey McGill. I'm the executive director of Fiscal Plate Arts, and like, it gives me goosebumps to hear a mayor talk like that, right? To be so supportive and know so well the connection between arts and economic development, as well as community development in the city. So I am honored to be here. That's why I've been in this role for 10 years. And I'm so proud to share all that we've done with you. So you have our winter arts guide, which does feel appropriate for today, right? That tells you everything that went on in the past couple of months, highlights a bunch of our showcase artists. I believe Stephanie is sharing a map with you guys. So anybody who has time after the meeting tonight, if you want to explore downtown Noblesville, we've highlighted some of the art-centric experiences that you can visit tonight in town. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out, we are seeking ferry house builders right now. So if anybody has expertise in that, we have a big ferry festival next month where we show all those off, and it's open to all ages. Usually 4th grade Girl Scouts win because they bring the most boats in, but it's stiff competition. So again, just thank you for being here. We're so glad to have you get a chance to experience what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to mention that Ailey and Nickel Plate are our Region 7 Arts Partner. They are brand new in that role. Why they're doing that for us.
Thank you, Ailey. I have a 4th grader Girl Scout.
She's like already ahead of the game then. She's got, the odds are good.
Make a note, we will be looking forward to participating. Thank you. Stephanie, if you could do a roll call.
Yes, thank you, Ann. Chad Bolser,
Present.
Libby Chu,
Present.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Here.
Dave Heist,
Here.
Greg Hull,
Here.
Walter Kanabi,
Here.
Lori McRobbie,
Here.
Jake Oakman,
Here.
Kelsey Pieper, here, Alan Platt,
Here.
Sophia Soto,
Here.
Dusty Stemmer,
Here.
Ann Valentine,
Here.
and then IAC staff, Connie Brom,
Connie Brom, IAC Marketing and Communications Director.
Stephanie Haynes,
Stephanie Haynes, Arts Education and Accessibility Program Manager.
Maya Michelson,
Maya Michelson, Executive Director.
Chapin Schnick,
David Schnick, Grants Research and Technology Manager.
Paige Sharp,
Paige Sharp, Deputy Director, Programs.
and I'm Stephanie Findler, Executive Assistant. And then we also have Ann Fields Monacle here. She is our RAP co-chair. And then any guests with us? Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name's Benny Kenworthy. I'm a recent president of Noblesville, and I have some more basic down in the lobby if you want to take a look at those. Just came here. I'm sorry.
Great.
Thank you. And then just to remind everyone, since the governor's emergency order ended, the commission will be meeting according to our electronic meeting policy, which means that any members who are attending virtually must be seen and heard vote on action items. All action items will be by roll call vote. And in addition, we will be utilizing a consent agenda as discussed during the December quarterly business meeting. And as a reminder, a consent agenda items are approved under one motion without discussion. If a member would like a separate vote on an item or would like to discuss an item, it must be removed from the consent agenda. A member can move a consent agenda item to the full agenda, but that does not require a motion or a vote. Anyone have any questions? Thank you, Ann.
Yes, thank you. All right. So, and I noticed Libby had a question in the chat. Libby, we did hear you chime in that you were here. Was there something else you needed to say, or we're good? Okay. I'll assume that was it.
Yeah.
Now I can't hear you, Libby, but I see that you're muted.
She's muted.
All right, we'll get rolling and come back, Libby. Wave your hand really high when you need us. So first on our agenda, we have the agenda provided as well as the December 10th, 2021 meeting minutes. I would like to ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Stephanie, the roll call, please.
Thank you. Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Yes.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Walter?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Thank you. Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey,
Aye.
Alan.
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Dusty,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. You have also before you the consent agenda. Are there any commissioners who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay. Since no one wants to move anything, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Stephanie, for the roll call, please.
Thank you. Chad,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Walter,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Sophia,
Aye.
Dusty,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we will move on to committee reports, and what we have first is the Committee on the Future, Maya and Chad talking about our strategic plan.
Okay, so if you can see what is pulled up or in your printed materials, there's really 4 things that we'll be talking about today. One, the conclusion of our strategic plan, which ended at the end of 2021. That strategic plan has guided us, served us very well, and we have established through that some KPIs and some assessments of where we've come with that plan. I think it's important. Obviously, we know what the last 2 years have done to those sorts of, the strategic plan, and as this body realized that survival was primary on the list of things for a lot of our organizations, and for this organization, that did a little bit of that, which is the reason that the second part, the adoption of a bridge plan, will be a part of the discussion here. And then the planning for the new strategic plan, which will hopefully, if you are okay with that, to be from 2024 to 2028. Now, again, those dates as we start these dates and talk about them, it gets a little nerve-wracking thinking about what we'll all be doing at those times. So let's start the first part. Chapin is going to go through a little bit of the KPI and the assessment of the one that was completed, the strategic plan that ended at the end of 2021.
Cool. Hi. I'm going to try to be in the screen, but also not showing them my backside. So I wanted to start by just kind of showing you methods of the madness. We had sat down as a staff and looked at the work that had been done with Metris Arts Consulting, am I saying that right? Mm-hmm. And decided what the key performance indicators might be to determine if we had met those strategic goals. And so this is just a screenshot of kind of some note-taking that I had done, looking at some of the questions and thinking about basically what data that we had thought we wanted to assess, and then realizing, for example, like, well, maybe we don't actually yet collect data based on race of board members. So, kind of going through, all right, these are the things that we want to know maybe in the future, but these are the things we know right now. And so from there, one of the things that we started with was a fiscal baseline. And now that it's up there, I see how tiny it is. But I wanted to have as broad a stretch as possible. So when we had the data, we would compare as early as we could to current. And so in this case, we absolutely could look at from fiscal year 18, the beginning of the strategic plan, to current, so FY22. And just kind of an overview of what this is. So we've got our base dollars that were the state appropriation, which includes our general operating funds, 13910, and the state match, which comes into play with what we get from the NEA. Oh, I think I have a little pointer. You can't see that at home. And so once we have the lovely state appropriation, then we do have a state budget agency holdback. In previous years, it was a little lower, as we know, with the pandemic. They thoughtfully held back more so that we could be, considerate of our spending. And so that's why it doesn't really show green here, but we've got income, red, what came away. And so this becomes our new state appropriation. So usually mid 3 million. And then we get our NEA, so our National Endowment for the Arts, our federal funding, and that gets tacked on along with a couple, well, 3 of our fiscal years we did get special funding. You may know, for example, last fiscal year in 2021, we got $10 million for an arts, cultural, and destination. I've been struggling with that B word, and marketing organization program. We had ARP funding in FY22, and that also includes, because that was only 846,000, so it also includes like the Poetry Foundation that Stephanie Haynes got us, and the NASA Creative Aging Grant, and then CARES funding in FY20. And then that's how we end up with our actual budget. So, just looking at what money we have. And so I wanted to share just a couple, again, tiny, but I'll say aloud, some of the things that we looked at. And so one of those was community engagement. In FY21, in the final grant reports for the 2 regional initiative grants, so that's arts project support and arts organization support, we very awesomely started with, I'm sure it was discussions with Paige and Deanna and Maya, and I wasn't lucky to be in that, but I'm glad to be in it now. But looking at whether the organizations felt like they, with the help of our funding, as a grantee, if they were able to increase their community engagement. And also looking at kind of their thoughts on their own community in terms of, for example, 78% of the organizations, both APS and AOS together, they believe their community has a thriving, vibrant arts community, which is amazing. And I'm excited to see, I know we're going to talk briefly about it later, how this will ultimately kind of dovetail with some other community data that is being collected. And then also, for example, thinking about the goals that the grantees were able to meet. So not surprisingly, but very positively, 59%, so almost 2/3 of all fiscal year 21 grantees felt like they met all of the following goals. So that includes they were able to meet their artistic goals, their financial and organizational development goals, and then their goals relating to IDEA. So the inclusion, diversity, equity, access. So, really great findings. Again, it's tiny, so I'm not gonna read it to you, but I think we shared maybe 6 or 7 pages in there. So you're welcome at any time, pull me aside if you have questions. But I'm excited to continue to collect similar data so that we can continue to compare and strengthen the knowledge on how our grantees are being affected by our funding. And I think I'm passing it to Chad. Do you want it, or am I giving it to Mark?
I don't know that I necessarily.
Okay. I'll just click away.
Maybe I will need a pointer, but I don't think so. So this is where the commission is, because obviously 2021 is past. We are no longer under that strategic plan. And so what, instead of hurrying up and writing a new strategic plan or throwing things together and coming for the approval so we can cover ourselves, so to speak, what, and I think this has been, just from my perspective, is a really smart and strategic approach to this, which would be, we are bringing to you the bridge plan, which would cover us from now until, and you have a copy of what's on page 3 of this section, 2022 to 2023. So from current to December 31st, 2023. And this bridge plan really is a continuation of the previous plan and the adjustments that the last 2 years have brought this body and all of our organizations. There are obviously some new things in there which we want to highlight to you. You see the mission and vision is the same, but the we believe statements in there, and we believe in equitable access to the arts for all. We believe in the central role of arts in the communities. When arts and culture thrive in a community, the community thrives. By the way, we got a pretty decent endorsement on that statement in the introduction. We believe all should feel welcome, valued, and have opportunity to benefit from creative activity. And we believe all art forms and artistic traditions provide a full and meaningful creative expression. So those, and obviously those, we can have a discussion on that, but a lot of the conversation that was taking place in that sort of strange virtual period of time when we were looking at a lot of what was going on in the planning. So, and then there are goals with priorities, and you can see those. Support Indiana arts and culture through all stages of pandemic recovery. Obviously, really important. It will not stop just because we are able to take our masks off or whatever. Our organizations are going to need support completely through the process. Model and advance culture of learning, reflection, leadership, and action in inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Provide pathways to learning in the arts for all, and nurture and acknowledge each citizen's unique creative expression and artistic interests. Both of those last two are continuing priorities, and you can see that both of the ongoing from the goals from the previous strategic plan. So one of the things, and I can ask Maya to comment on this, but what we're asking from the commission today is to move this bridge plan and adopt that from current until the end of 2023. And then we'll also, and I don't know if you want to comment now and start the next portion of this, but our timeline, develop a plan, including the process and timeline shared the Committee of the Future in May at the commission meeting in the June quarterly business meeting. So we're really talking about what the timeline will be, but think of it in this perspective. Our strategic plan will be from 2024 to 2028, starting on January 1, 2023. We will begin the process of a years-long writing of the strategic plan with all that will entail of going to stakeholders, to engaging the communities. We started that process, if you remember, way back when, where we had those community forums. By the way, those were great. And I forgot about them until we started talking about this. I was like, oh yeah, we
really got one, and then we had a pandemic. So
yeah, how great were those? Anyway, so that is another part of this that you will receive a formal timeline moving forward on that. So I'll turn over to Maya.
No, Chad, I couldn't say it any better. That really summarizes the work or how we've been thinking about strategic planning and sort of the best posture and best way to move forward in this moment. That we see the green shoots of recovery, but we really don't know what that looks like quite yet, right? So we need a little more time to begin to, because you want to plan from some sort of environment that you can recognize and have some assurance that environment is going to be somewhat stable going forward. And we're just not quite there yet. So we feel like the most prudent thing to do is to pass a bridge plan, give us a year and a half of sort of seeing where things are, spend that 2023 calendar year in writing, and then have a new plan going forward in 24. We're seeing a lot of other state arts commissions do that, adopting bridge plans. And because the last thing we wanted to do was to run pell-mell toward a plan and then have to sort of pull back mid-time. So anyway, happy to answer any other questions. Really appreciate Chad's leadership here. He's got lots of experience in strategic planning. Has been a great source and support and guidance as we think about this. So anyway, any questions? Yes, Walter.
This is Greg Hall. I was curious if our equity consultant would be able to be involved in this process as well.
That's a great question, and yes, I think we anticipate, Greg, that will happen. Absolutely, there'll be some alignment. And as we think about what our equity consultant will be doing, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about Region 7 here in a few minutes. The opportunity to align some of the learnings that they'll help us unearth as part of that process will definitely inform the strategic plans. So yeah, thank you.
I'll ask the same thing I asked in the committee, which is, given where the staffing is, you have some open positions, and much like every other entity in the country having trouble may be challenging to fill those. Is this bridge plan reasonable to accomplish for what you currently have, still being a stretch, but not an overwhelming, like we're gonna lose some of you because we've asked too much of you?
Yeah. So I feel like we've talked as a staff and been pretty honest about what we think we can do. And again, because we're recognizing that there's still some things from the plan that we haven't quite finished out. Arts learning will be a big part of the next plan or the bridge plan, and Stephanie's going to talk a little bit about where we are. We really tried to write that bridge plan recognizing where we were and where we had momentum currently, as opposed to trying to set up things that we needed to then generate momentum for. So really taking where we were and areas that were really starting to emerge and sort of making that the foundation for the bridge plan. But yeah, great question. And we did have some pretty honest conversations, and certainly could have been more aggressive, but pulled back, really focusing on what we're currently doing. So, but good question.
I would just add, I really appreciate you all taking this step. I think not being artificially obligated to a time frame just because the other one is ending, given our current environment and all the things that we need to take into consideration. And this distills really down very well. So anyway, kudos to everyone who worked on this. I appreciate it.
And just if I could add one other thing, which is the encouragement to the staff, which is good strategic planning will help us move forward in things, but also get rid of things.
Mm-hmm.
And you should celebrate both of those equally, because if we're focused, we're better as an organization. Yeah. And I think that has been, that was really good in this transition.
Yeah, I like really short plans. Very short plans. Very short plans.
Anyone else for discussion or questions on the plan, the bridge plan? Okay, I will, we have I will entertain a motion to approve the 2022-2023 Indiana Arts Commission Bridge Plan.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Stephanie, if you'll call the roll.
Thank you. Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Walter?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Dusty?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we move into programs, grants, and services, and I think Stephanie takes over for arts learning next steps.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to report on the strengthening of our relationship as a state agency with the Department of Education's state agency, and they have committed to us $85,000 to support the continuation of our arts integration programming across the state. This is in partnership with the Title Funding Office, specifically Title IV. They have funding available for supporting teachers in growing well-rounded education. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll be managing the program, taking what we've learned from the PACE program, and PACE is Partnering Arts Communities and Education. We've been developing this framework in arts integration for the past 7 years, doing research and testing the model in schools across the state, different types of schools across the state, and we've come up with a really great approach to infusing arts into the school day, specifically elementary school, and to make the students' learning outcomes better. So we've come up with this model. The Department of Education is helping us now expand it, provide training opportunities for teachers across the state. It'll be free to teachers this summer to attend. And then we're going to follow it up with a fellowship program so that teachers can take what they learn, go back to the classroom and really practice it. They'll be able to hire a local artist to come to their classroom and do arts integration with them, with the students. So this is going to start, starting now. We have an advisory committee of arts education professionals from across the state and teaching artists who are going to help us form the training. It will happen this summer, and the fellowship will happen over the next school year. So that's a really exciting next step for the arts learning portion of the ISC agency work. The PACE research will be published this summer, the final capstone report from Dr. Bob Sable. So we look forward to publishing that information. But you've all heard the interim reports over the last few years, and everything's trending really well in that research. So we're real confident in where that's going. We also have been working with the Indiana Youth Institute. We asked a few questions of ourselves, like we still have limited resources when it comes to arts education. So how do we prioritize those resources? And we know we want to reach schools with low access to the arts, but who are those schools exactly and how do we identify them? But we went to the Indiana Youth Institute, who specializes in research on youth well-being in Indiana. And we asked them to pull the data. The DOE already has this data, but they have mega data and they don't always pull it apart the way we would like them to. So the IY is able to get the data from the DOE and report it back out to us, kind of do the analysis on who has access to arts education, who has robust access, and who has less access across the state. That report, and the first draft of that report, is in your materials. We're still working with IYI to finalize all the information in there, but I think that's going to be a really great tool as well as we, again, think about where we can support schools across the state and prioritize our limited resources. So that's also going on in arts learning. And I also wanted to mention, now that we just saw that the strategic plan goal of pathway to learning for all, I wanted to mention that the arts learning department of the ISC has taken on this creative aging work. It's been so successful, so rewarding. All across the state, we've gotten great feedback. And that is it really fits with that goal, pathway to learning for all. Young people get a lot of the focus of arts education work, but we want all people and all parts of their life to have access to arts and enrich. And there's a lot of research out there that we're now tapping into that says when you're an older adult, and after your work life and you're in the second part of your life, that is the time when people are the most vibrant in their creative lives. They know what they want, they have experience, and they know that they have the time and the wisdom to do all these artistic activities. And then the research shows that it's also beneficial to increase socialization and decrease isolation for older adults in their communities. So we're really excited about where this program might go in the future. That is the Arts Learning Report. Thank you.
I just want to take a second. We have been, to give Stephanie a shout out, we have been, she's been tilling the field with the Department of Education for several years now. And it is, those of us who are adjacent to the Department of Education know it's a gigantic agency. They do amazing work, but they do a lot of work, and it's a complicated, complex agency to build partnerships and get things going. And so I really applaud Stephanie's tenaciousness over the last few years, slowly but surely building relationships, providing them with data, having good conversations, and reasons that agencies step out in partnership with us is because we prove ourselves a good partner. We prove ourselves a good partner in the truest sense, in that we come at it with shared goals that we want to achieve together. So, and it's building trust to make those kind of partnerships. So I really applaud Stephanie's work in building that trust, taking the time, and bringing this bringing this home for us. We're really excited. We think it's just the first step of what we may be able to do together with DOE. So this feels like a round of applause moment.
Excellent, thank you, Stephanie. Next, we have Region 7 and Equity. Paige?
Yeah, I'm gonna take this, or I'm gonna start it. I'll put it that way. I'm gonna stand up, so watch out. Where's the pointer? How do I make this thing? The red pointers, the red. This is the red. Yes, yeah, okay, yeah. Clearly, I don't use these very often. So you'll, yeah. Yeah, let me make sure that. So one of the reasons that we went to a consent agenda, number one, was to cut an hour off this meeting time.
Yeah. I've got to bring a round of applause.
But also, so that we could have some time to have conversation, right, and to talk about things, and which we couldn't do when we were trying to hurry through so many other things. So this is one of the big things that we wanted to talk about, and we have wanted to talk about for some time with the commission. And you may remember that at the December quarterly business meeting, there was conversation around issues related to equity and Region 7. And so we announced that we were going to ask some commissioners to form a study group. And that was Greg and Ann and Lisa Abbott, who's not with us, who sat down with staff, primarily Paige and Stephanie Haynes and Chapin and Deanna and myself, to look at data, look at sort of where we were in Region 8 related to funding and equity and so forth, and start to think about what might be next. So that, I'm just setting the stage. And so I'm going to sort of cue up the conversation, and then maybe some of the study group folks will talk a little bit, and then we'll sort of have some next steps that we're going to ask you to think about, or hopefully endorse, so that we can go forward. So this is equity in the IAC regional strategy. So just want to sort of remind everyone where we are related to equity and what we've done so far. Inclusion, diversity, equity, and access was included in our 2017-2021 strategic plan and is part of the proposed, now finalized, thank you, or approved 22-23 bridge plan. We conducted research to discern where the field is in this work, where everyone is related to IDEA. We adopted terminology. We assessed and revised programmatic policies to increase access to our programs. We prioritized community engagement and IDEA in funding guidelines and review criteria. So you can see sort of incremental, setting the stage, talking to the field, investigating the field, asking the field, and then sort of putting that into action. We did training to help support the field and understanding what this work was and the importance of it and the impact of it, and just support them, recognizing that good training is not just information, but support and applause. We facilitated focus groups with underrepresented stakeholders. You may remember from June, Jamal Smith did 4 or 6, some number, larger 4, greater than or equal to 4 focus groups with underrepresented groups around the state related, and asked questions around about the agency and the work that we do as it relates to equity. And then lastly, we adopted a cultural equity statement that the commission adopted last year. And there it is. And I just passed by it, so I'm going to go back. I just want to highlight the last part is we believe in embracing diversity, championing inclusion, practicing equity, embodying both the geographic and cultural variety that form the fabric of Indiana. So just setting the stage of where we are with equity. Now I want to talk globally for a second. I want to talk about our regional granting programs. You hear us use these acronyms all the time. You hear us talk about these programs. I want to sort of reacquaint you with them, help you understand what they are and how they work for us. So we've got 2 regional granting programs, funding programs. Arts Organizational Support, AOS, as it's lovingly known, 1, 2, and 3. Provides annual operating support for the ongoing artistic and administrative function of eligible arts organizations. Important. Program and funding based on budget size. That's how we currently fund. We divide up 1, 2, and 3 based on budget size. AOS, under 250,000, AOS 1. AOS 2, over $250,000. AOS 3, 1 million plus, and they must demonstrate service to more than one region. So regional serving organizations. Levels 1 and 2 are administered through the regional arts partners. And I'll talk a little bit more about them here in a second. The IEC administers level 3, AOS 3. So we administer that centrally. Arts project support provides funding to nonprofit organizations and public entities. We fund a fair number of city governments, park systems, and things like that, for a specific arts project or activity. Things like festivals, gallery exhibitions, and so forth. Applicants can request up to $5,000. And the APS program is administered by the regional arts partners. You hear us mention them all the time. Again, just an opportunity to sort of reacquaint everyone to what this regional arts partner system is. So I want to take you back into the Wayback Machine, back to the late 80s, early 90s, for those of us who were alive at that time. At that time, these programs were administered centrally. In other words, all applications came in to the Arts Commission's office. Grant panels were operated, and then funding went out centrally. And the recognition came that majority of the funding was going to Indianapolis and going to Indianapolis-based organizations. And so Jim Bowden-Miller, former commissioner who actually got a Governor's Arts Award last year, helped steward and shepherd the commission toward the idea of a regional system in which funding and funding decisions were dispersed geographically across the state. So that's how we got this regional partner system. And we have a partner in each of our 12, number 12, but only 11 regional partners. So I could do a whole nother presentation about why there's no regional 11. But anyway, they manage the AOS 1 and 2 and APS grant programs in their respective regions. Each region receives a specific regional allocation. Region 4, you get, this amount of money, okay? Regional allocation is based on population from most recent census. Okay, so everybody gets their bucket based on where they're, what recent census numbers say about the size of their region. But they all administer the same program, right? And Anne, who's here, is from Region 4, the Arts Federation. They're our regional partner. Oh, good point, right? Because I got this thing. So they got a big region. They got a big region. So so that's the system, right? So that's the system of how we provide the funding. So what's the strategy? So here's our current regional strategy. So AOS, as I mentioned, grant awards are based upon total budget income. Larger the budget, the larger your potential award. But no more than 20% of the organization's total income, and we rarely get close to that. So priority funding goes to organizations. All AOS organizations that are eligible for funding are funded, essentially. About a 98 to 100% success rate, right? If you score highly enough, then you are almost guaranteed funding as an organization. And this is a strategy, it's current strategy. Regional allocation, as I mentioned, is based on population per capita. Smaller population regions receive less dollars to distribute to APS and AOS 1 and 2 eligible grantees, okay? So that's that's essentially our strategy in a nutshell. So here's what FY22 looks like for the category, right? So AOS 1, you can use this pointer. AOS 1, acceptance rate of 99%, essentially. AOS 2, 85, 100%. AOS 3, 13, 100%. APS, 165, about 83% acceptance rate. That's statewide. We'll talk a little bit about what it looks like region by region here in a second. So, as I mentioned, in December, we advocated for the for Region 7 study group to be formed to examine our grants making in Region 7. We'll talk about why we need to do that and why that was important. To focus on sustainability and equity, and to better understand how grants making in Region 7 both impacts and is impacted by the current regional strategy. So we have trouble in River City a little bit. So the Region 7 study group was put together to help us kind of look at that and help make sure that they understood it and help us make sure that we were thinking about what we were seeing in the right way, right? To do what commissioners do, which is to help us make sure that we're seeing and thinking about things in the way that we should. So a little bit about Region 7. So obviously we're in it right now. So there's Region 7. 7 counties: Boone, Hamilton, Hancock, Hendricks, Johnson, Marion, and Shelby. Most densely populated region, obviously. It's the only region in the state where we don't have a county that is, every single county is categorized as urban, essentially. There's no other region for that is the case. Every single one in Region 7 is technically urban, although there are rural places within Region 7. Regional Arts Partner, as I mentioned, Nickel Plate, Ailey, who was here previously. More about Region 7. They have the highest number of AOS2, that's that mid-sized organizational grantee. They have 32 versus 11 in Region 3, which is the next region, Fort Wayne area, that has the closest number to them. And they have the largest number of AOS3, which is the $1 million plus organizations. They got 10 out of the 13, okay?
Are those other 3 in Fort Wayne as well?
One is in Fort Wayne, one is in Wabash, and the other is in Evansville. Yeah.
Thank you.
Region 7 cannot fund arts organizations under $50,000 due to lack of funds. They just can't. Other regions can do that, but 7 cannot because there is simply not enough funding in the pool. Why? Of course, bigger organizations, bigger grants, more organizations, just more organizations. Region 7 supports fewer arts project grants than other regions. Only about 27% of projects get funded in Region 7 versus 83% roughly statewide, again, due to a lack of funds. In Marion County, only 2 projects got funded in Marion County. And remember, projects go to not just arts organizations, but boys and girls clubs, potentially, church organizations that are doing all sorts of things. I mean, anything that can be a project, can be an arts project. We only fund 2. We can only fund 2 in Marion County. So that's, again, a little, a challenge about Region 7. This funding conundrum has existed for years and continues to deepen. So this is not something that just happened yesterday and we just thought we'd tell you about it. This is something that's been going on for years. Every June when commissioners approved the funding allocations, there was a lot of zhuzhun going on behind the scenes to get the numbers for you to approve, right? We didn't show you how the sausage got made. We just showed you the sausage. And so this is sort of a little more about how the ingredients of the sausage. What we've learned, so once we convened the study group, we began to pull lots of data, look at lots of data related to Region 7 and where we were and sort of how things looked and so forth. And here's some other things that we've learned through the data. The current regional strategy is not sustainable for the future. Part of that's a good news story, right? The field is growing. We've got more organizations, more projects are coming to us. We're doing better about communicating the opportunities that we have. We're making making more connections with communities. They're excited about what we do and what we offer. We're getting more applicants. Organizations are getting better. They're growing, not just necessitated by our support or through our support. They're just growing. More activity. That's a good thing. But it's outpacing the dollars that we have. Whoa, come back. Sorry. Yeah. Our current regional strategy isn't equitable. It's not sustainable and it's not equitable. Larger organizations receive larger grants and have more agency. In other words, they've got paid grants writing staff. They've got some fundamental advantages that smaller organizations just may not have. They're primarily located in urban areas where there are other sources of arts operating funding. Award is based on growth in size, right? So the more you grow, the more you get, and that again continues to bring dollars from the pool to those, or attract dollars from the pool to those organizations based on our current strategy. In regions 1 and 7, 1 is the northwest corner of the state. Funding is not reaching smaller organizations, those under $50,000, which disproportionately impacts emerging organizations, newer organizations, all volunteer organizations, or organizations led or serving people of color. In Region 7, APS funding is not reaching those kinds of applicants because of the system as well as the strategy. So more of what we've learned through the data. And again, I'll go into the weeds for just a second. We use a push-pull strategy as it relates to these regional allocations. And so what happens when we sit down, once the panels are done and we sit down and look at what allocations are, we look, some regions underperform. Some regions don't have as many applicants as they have dollars to give away. And so dollars go from them and they go into regions, primarily 7, where there are more applicants and more projects than we can support. So it's in part, what we're able to do for Region 7 now is in part reliant on underperformance of other regions. And we've not pushed performance in those other regions because Region 7 continues to grow. Paige, you look like you want to say something. No, want to jump in? Okay, great. Just want to make sure I'm not, yeah.
I was just wrapped within.
You're so wrapped, yeah, you're just absolutely fascinated.
Like, wow, that's rare.
Yeah, I do that often to people. Yeah. The primacy of the regional granting program is about 70% of our budget in total. Means little funding for other initiatives or emerging opportunities. Some of you who've been with us for a few years know in the last budget hit we took, we put 2 large artist supporting programs to the side. Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites, we supported not just artists, but as well as organizations, as well as the Individual Advancement Program. Both of those programs, primarily serving artists, we put to the side to continue to focus, to continue to work the strategy of supporting organizations. We're able to expand PACE because Stephanie Haynes was able to go out and create a partnership with DOE for additional funding to build that out. We're not able to do really much of anything for communities with the exception of the Cultural District Program and what funding can come out through arts project support. So, and as things emerge, we can't respond particularly nimbly because so much of the funding is going out the door through this regional system. So the study group, we shared all this data. We buried them with data. Bless their hearts. We did, yeah. And they asked us some really smart questions, which is why we brought them, why we wanted to pull them together and ask them to work with us to begin with. And they asked us a couple of questions. So first is, what's the impact we should be looking to make with our resources? What are we trying to do with the money we're granting? What do we want to make happen? What's the impact? And we went, oh, we don't know that we really sort of thought about it. and what impact should we be looking for our resources generally and the regional funding program specifically? Great question. Hadn't really thought about it, or hadn't thought about it in a while. And then we really like this. What were the staff's recommendations on how to proceed? We love when people ask us for our recommendations. And so what I'm about to share are our recommendations that we're bringing to you, that staff is bringing to you. And the study group has had a chance to chew on these a little bit. So here are the recommendations we've got. And these are just recommendations, and I'm not asking the commission to endorse any of this right now. These are just recommendations. Consider a new overarching vision for our work. Equitable access to the arts, to arts for all, working draft. Further refine the overarching vision into a programmatic vision, right? Arts resources are equitably distributed and directed where they can deliver the most impact based on IEC priorities. Again, this is a working draft, and we expect you endorse the process that we're recommending, then all of this will be up for debate and discussion. It was just a thought exercise by the working group, which we really appreciate, the study group, to get us thinking about, could we even put this down on paper? So this is just a first sort of bite of the apple. And then define what we mean by impact. When we're talking about impact, we mean a lot of different things. We could just talk about the number of people served. We could talk about, change across a series of metrics that we might be looking for in the way that we talked about community engagement or inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. But we can define impact in a lot of different ways. Right now, we kind of define it essentially by numbers of people served. But there are lots of other ways we could do that, and maybe we should think about those. And then lastly, and this is the big one, construct a new statewide regional strategy model that is developed, number one, in consideration of 1, 2, and 3 above, the vision, the programmatic vision, and the definition of impact, all important, with field input, super important, right? We would be crazy to do this work on our own. Number one, wisdom of crowds. And number two, we need to hear what the field thinks about all this, right? We're talking a lot about rural places and small organizations. We need to hear from them. We need to hear about what they need and how our programs can support them. Number three, under the guidance of an equity consultant. So to Greg's question earlier, absolutely. And you can begin to see how this conversation can help inform a strategic planning process. And lastly, adopted for implementation in the FY 24-25 grant cycle, which would mean that the commission would need to endorse new guidelines and all that stuff by December of this year. Okay, that's a lot, right? That's big, but we're up for it. We're up for it. So I have talked way too long, but I want to open it up for the study group for comments from them and thoughts, and just open it to the commission at large to hear sort of how you respond to what we've put together.
If I could start, that was a brilliant job. So thank you for that. That was a wonderful way to lay it out and to describe the process, I think, really effectively, and the problem that we're trying to address. And through this conversation, recognizing that part of this is because Region 7 is growing, and that's a good thing, but we've made a commitment to equity as an organization, as a state, as a country, and a lot of our partners are also making these commitments. So this is really an opportunity, and the timeline might be a little pressing, but I think we can manage it. But this seems like a wonderful opportunity to do the work that we committed to do as we adopted our vision and mission. So,
yeah, I would, great way to lay it out, Maya, thank you. And the amount of data that you and the team have put together, and sort of like, it could look like this, or it could look like that. I mean, it was fantastic and overwhelming. So I appreciate today, because this was really, was great. But I want to make sure everyone understands, like, there was a lot of depth behind these recommendations. And to the point that in my current role at United Way, we talk a lot about what is our impact, and sometimes we feel like we are just sprinkling. And I think that's where we are with the Arts Commission grants, is sprinkling, which is important to show that yes, taxpayer dollars, that we value the arts. But for many organizations, like, we say we impact and we measure it by the number of people served, but it's for a very large organization that gets a grant from us, and for the percentage of their thing, that yes, they are serving a whole bunch of people, but really what is our dollar impact to that is different than if we looked at a small urban organization that's just getting started, or if we looked out in rural Indiana and thought about what would $5,000 do in Jay County versus what it might do for a very large organization in Marion County. And I get excited thinking about the impact, given that our budget has not grown in a long time. So I think there's great potential to really have a different kind of impact and sort of put our money where our mouth is around our commitment to equity. So I'm excited about this. It is an aggressive timeline, but I think and I have said to the staff, like, let's go. And if, halfway through the summer, you're overwhelmed and we can't get it done, then we could come up maybe with a different timeline. But it does then also present a great opportunity to be able to talk to legislators about the value of the changes that we're making that they might see in their own community. So I think this is great. And I would love, since we have been deep into it, to hear other commissioners' response, having not been as deep as Greg and I have been.
I've always felt the inequality to smaller communities, so I'm really excited about this. And I think the smaller communities need help to grow. And one of our goals being to have access all across the state, you're going to have to put some focus on some of those lesser populous places. And so kudos to all of you that are working on this. It's needed.
I like the point that you made, that $5,000 to a big institution, the impact it has versus a small town. Wow, that's, so that really grabbed me as a focus.
And I think that looking at the problem is probably part of the solution, because it seems like if you're giving money to Region 7, yes, they have professionals that do the grants, and they will keep getting money, and happy to see them growing. But like Region 4, who's doing the grants in that one? And how are you going to grow if you don't get the money? And it's like a snowball going down a hill. It's like impossible to compete with some professional grant writers and, urban accessibility and resources. So yay, Rob, but yeah, it's a lot of work, kids. Okay, yay.
Let's know.
That's okay. All we need is permission, right? Yeah. All we need to know is that you're willing to go on this journey with us. That's what we need. That's what we're asking for.
In those discussions, was there any consideration of kind of a bigger picture approach of restructuring the regions, given the growth and the population movement? Obviously with our timeline, that doesn't allow for it at this point, but would there be a time where, for instance, Region 7 gets kind of dispersed a bit more, where there's a balance of urban and rural, and they sort of pull those around? And just the thought. And the other thing I really like, along with all the comments about the smaller groups, I am concerned still about in Region 7, those smaller groups, because my experience on being on boards is the bigger groups typically will find money. The money they need, the money they will find. The smaller groups often won't. So survival is involved there. So anyway, just a thought.
Yeah, and Alan, we have actually talked about some potential restructuring of Region 7, potentially breaking it up into 2 regions, but yeah, absolutely. And again, I don't want to go too far in the weeds, and Ann and Walter can testify. Greg can testify. My problem is that can testify. Yeah, you're getting pulled into this, Walter. I think that's what they mean.
Wow, that's pretty slick.
Congratulations, welcome to the study group. That we could think about a strategy that's different in every region too, potentially. That is one of the things that we've talked about. That's not a direction we're necessarily thrilled about thinking about, but the recognition that each geographic region is exactly the same and should be treated exactly the same is also, is worth consideration, right? So maybe we need to take a hard look at making sure that each region is able to do what it needs to do based on its unique assets, right? And unique funding situation and who's in those regions. So.
I think
I have one question. Oh, go ahead.
Go right ahead, Dusty.
How do you ask for more money?
So as a state agency, the governor presents to General Assembly recommendations. And it is important that the agencies follow the recommendations of the governor's office. And so the opportunity exists first with, we need to convince the administration that we would want and be ready to have more funding. And then it would be after that going to the General Assembly. It's important to not circumvent the administration.
Okay.
Or you.
Well, it just seems like Indiana is growing, at least everything I see driving down I-65, it's like another world. But also in Region 1, because of the influx of people from Illinois for all kinds of reasons, it's growing. So it seems like our little pot should be growing a little bit bigger. We have a bigger tax base. Who do you ask? That's a
process-wise, it comes through the budget office, and part of the challenge is, I mean, we have, until recently, it has been lean fiscal times.
Yes.
That is not the case right now, and why I think this could be helpful in those conversations with OMB and the budget director, because if you come with a new strategy, that opens the opportunity for discussion. I'm not in any way suggesting it's a slam dunk, because that is not.
No.
Right. My soon-to-be boss and her boss approach things, but I think it presents an opportunity.
Absolutely.
When you're going to come with, here's a whole new way we want to do business.
Equity, diversity, and that goes with that.
Absolutely. And again, to Ann's point, the strategy, and I think also the important message there is that it provides opportunity for us to serve others, right? To also, we want to talk about communities. We're hearing from communities constantly. That's a huge pressure on us right now to do more for communities in communities. So I think that's part of, Dusty, the larger ask, which is, yes, we need more money to support the system. And we also need more resources potentially to do other things and to support community growth, quality of place, and so forth and so on. So absolutely. So it'll be a yes and.
Yeah. Can I actually raise a sort of, I guess, a question, suggestion, something in between those two things about really to that point, whether, especially in this current climate, there is an opportunity for a special allocation. So, first question is what would that be for? And it goes back to maybe some fundamental questions about what we're trying to accomplish. And clearly under the idea rubric, when we think about perhaps a higher priority for smaller, more rural, more BIPOC-led organizations, that becomes a higher, just simply a higher priority, and a special allocation could be perhaps requested or promoted as a means to, perhaps over a 5-year period to try to move some more resources out to those kinds of organizations pretty explicitly, without necessarily requiring us to mess around with our regional structure, which frankly strikes me a little bit like rearranging the deck chairs. I mean, we'd have to understand what we're trying to accomplish if we do that, right? And to the points about how the state is changing, where rural is now, where urban is now, the question just seems to me is where do we think the resources need to be better concentrated, to what end? It just calls that whole set of questions, and I think we have answers for that, but perhaps a way to address it is through some kind of thinking about, rather than we need more money, a kind of special allocation.
So
perhaps that's been brought up. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
However,
I wasn't paying attention.
yes, sorry to jump in. Just real quickly, I'm thrilled you guys have looked at this, both the staff and the study group, a lot of important things. I don't see how you get to where we need to by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. To Lori's point, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so, I mean, that's to me is uber aggressive. Applaud you for trying to do it, but I wonder if that's realistic. I picking up on Lori and Dusty's point as well, is that, when we started this meeting, we heard from what Noblesville does for an Equiplane, $100,000. And, you know, I sit back and I go, that's pretty impressive. But the state really needs to figure out a way to make more of an impact. So, I'm not necessarily, and I hear what you're saying, and I don't know that means that it's an allocation to the Indiana Arts Commission. Is it more collaborations with other agencies? Is it funding from other sources, foundations or whatever? I don't know what the answer is, but to me, the arts is such a huge impact. And the impact on quality of place and on economic development, as we all know, is so huge. To Dusty's point, to think that we can continue to do that with the dollars that we have at our disposal. We can rearrange them, but we're still going to come up short in places. So I don't have any answers, but those are the concerns that I have.
It's okay. The only one, thanks for this. I think to the point on the aggressive timeline, I think this is part of it, and then leads into driving this sort of analysis into a strategic planning process, what your goals are, what that actually becomes, so that you can answer these questions on an ongoing basis. The other piece that I think I don't think I've ever quite figured out from this particular group is, it seems to me that when General Assembly and OMB and all of the things that are happening are making decisions on dollars, that the real force, the real concern for the state and Midwest and the country is our workforce. And I think that when we are thinking about this and not just figuring out how to utilize the dollars that we have, but to really make the case moving forward, the arts are wonderful and one of the best tools to develop a vibrant workforce in the future. And I'm not sure we've made that argument long term. It certainly is about quality of place, it's certainly, but when we talk, at least in my conversation, and I understand that I look at it through the lens of an Ivy Tech, but every time I've ever spoken to a legislator, it seems to me that that's top of mind all of the time. And I think for us to be able to expand our piece of the pie, that's going to have to be an argument that we can win on a regular basis, that we really are a group who does all of those things and develops the next generation of workers.
There's kind of, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go.
I mean, I really appreciate all of the thoughts around, particularly maybe special funding, because, you know, we are in a pretty critical situation where the field is growing and it's doing really well. And that is fantastic. Yay, the arts. But we're not growing. And we cannot sustain this pathway that we have. And right now, we're in the phase 2, you know, kind of, we're going to be in the midterm phase for supporting arts organizations. They're on 2 years of funding. In part, this gives us the opportunity to make some changes, because when we get the next budget, we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know if we're going to get special funding. And without it, we're going to have very little to be able to do other things besides support arts organizations, which we deeply value. Deeply value. We're not asking to diminish that. We're just we're wanting to re-strategize so that we can take the valuable resources that we get so that we can do things like support arts education, which is a big deal, particularly in terms of helping bolster workforce development, quite honestly. We see a correlation, a very distinct correlation between participation in the arts in high school and going on to higher education. There is very clear evidence of that. also conducted by Dr. Sable and supported with evidence on a national level too. So we have some urgency, and we love this stuff. You know, we could do this stuff every day, and we're in it. We're ready. We're not looking to perturb significantly. That is not our goal. But we really want to find a way where we can really focus more on our priorities as an agency rather than rewarding organizations for simply growing in size. There's so many communities in the state of Indiana, and we know how much just a little bit goes so far. I mean, my first grant from the Arts Commission, and I have no idea when it was. It's like 2000 with Bobby Garver, was $1,000. They still talk about that project in the community because it was so impactful to kids. It was $1,000. I mean, an arts person could take a buck and just, you're like, magic. It is so impactful in these rural communities. And that is attracting workforce, because without things to do, why would you want to go to that community? So yes, let's get more money. I'm all for that. But I have to express that I am very concerned about the timeline. So maybe we need to get a feasibility group together of some sort that's with the commission to think through some of that. Maybe Lori and whomever would want to think through that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've designed the timeline, or at least preliminarily, that we're going to do it. Obviously, we'll do a check-in. We'll do a check-in in June to tell you where we are, how far we've gotten, and obviously September. And so those are the moments, or the times for the commission to say, I don't think we're quite there yet, right? So let's slow the roll here, or let's do this and then not this, potentially. But to the discussion again about resources and so forth, what we want to try to do is design a system that expands and contracts right now, eventually. That's what we want to get to. That in the lean times, the percentages sort of still look the same, and in the good times, the percentages still look the same, that we've got room underneath whatever structure we put together, that we can continue to do other things. Because right now we're out of whack at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So that from a structural standpoint, I'm an accordionist, so I'm thinking about an accordion. So that's what we want to do. We want to build a better accordion, right, for this agency, so that, again, we continue to make as primacy those things that need to be primacy, but that we've got that flexibility to serve other things as needed. And the impact question, I think, is the most important question you need to answer, to Lori's point, and then to the study group's point, is we will never have enough, ever. We will never have enough funding to do what we want to do and what needs to be done. We won't. So what impact do we want to see with what we've got? And I think that's a fundamental question that we have got to that we need to investigate. And we hope that the commission will kind of come along with us in that conversation. So,
and I think that's really important. Aligning our goals with the way we measure impact, I think, is really important. It's really necessary, and it's something we can't do like we have. So.
Absolutely. Can I just sort of raise one more point, which again I think has come up in earlier discussions about the degree to which we engage partners, which and to point, I think not quite sure who made the point about when we think about special allocations, perhaps some of this could come from partners as opposed to from the state. But it strikes me that in the early, and I know there have been plans, ideas about engaging other potential funders, but I think if we're talking about kind of in a sense a new system, that we need to kind of catalyze the thinking of other potential funders in the state. Lilly Endowment is the one that always comes to mind, of course, but there are others, and that I think that's something we could certainly undertake this year. And perhaps there are even some nibbling around the edges sorts of things we could do, even, cutting back certain allocations by, 1%, 2%. I mean, I think to Paige's point about how often very small grants go a long way, we could start to perhaps build up a pool that could be allocated. In the current fiscal year, because I share of course, the concerns about trying to get to something in the upcoming budget year, but maybe there are some small steps we could take. There's only 2 suggestions, I guess.
Thank you. Great. Great discussion. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to cultural districts. Paige?
Yeah, I am not going to stand and present. I'd love to, but I'm not feeling it today. So let's talk about culture districts, not for a real long time, because you were talking about shortening a meeting by an hour and we're like floating right through. But I want to first talk about what is a cultural district, just so we're kind of on the same page of what it looks like. And also a little difference between a cultural district and a statewide designated culture district, because there's a difference. So I asked Walter to talk about, how he would describe a culture district, because he's had the opportunity to work in that context. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, Walter.
Very briefly. I was on the commission with the city of Indianapolis when we developed the original cultural districts. And Justice Bohm headed that, the commission. And it was interesting that what he brought to it, he brought up the fact to me that that he worked on a project where they created Meridian Kessler. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said that the area was really going downhill. The big houses were in disrepair. So how do we brand that area, if you will, and make it, revitalize it? So that's what they did. They created Meridian Kessler, and there really isn't a Meridian Kessler. So he applied that strategy really to the cultural districts. So out of that came the obvious ones. There was Mass Ave and there was Broad Ripple, but the other ones to help save economically was certainly Fountain Square. And it's certainly worked there. And the other thing that I felt was really significant was bringing Indiana Avenue into it. So it can encapsulate that and keep the historic nature of it and help, really bring that up as well. So I think in our programs meeting, I was a little over enthusiastic about it. But it's been 22 years. And I was a teenager then, of course, but it's been 22 years, I can't believe it. You can now see the success of it. What Paige mentioned to me, which was kind of an epiphany to me, she said it takes time. And it's true. It's really taken quite a long time to develop these, but to see that in retrospect now is pretty terrific.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Walter. That was perfect. So, it's a branded area. It's arts and cultural activities. They're, visually, when you're in a cultural district. And, but what about a statewide designated cultural district? The difference in this regard, I think the biggest key point is that there's dedicated a management team specifically focused on a cultural district. And then there's budget that's allocated specifically around activities and actions in the cultural district. So planning is also a big part of it. So it's included in the community economic development plan, and it's a community development plan. So for a cultural district to be designated on the state level, it's a pretty rigorous process. So the Arts Commission got involved with this around 2008, 2009 through legislation, of which there was no resources attached, but it was, it was the wave of the times. Let's leverage the arts for economic development. Let's help people recognize that the arts are an important catalyst for community and tourism development, and really pulling folks into these little epicenters and how valuable that is. We really didn't think about the long view, how many cultural districts, and we thought, well, once we started getting more cultural districts, and they're like, well, are you gonna give us money? I mean, what more is there to this? And we're like, okay, well, we have $5,000 we'll set aside for project grants to help support. And Senator Ford, I think it was in 2019, he ushered forward a bill to help gather resources to go to the culture districts. And while it ultimately did not pass, there was a lot of support early on. If we go to the next slide, though, you'll see that we do have, Chapin, yay, good job. We do have 12 cultural districts. We are starting to see a little bit of a clustering. So where we have Noblesville, Carmel, and Fishers, obviously is a pretty big cluster, right, in the Region 7 territory. And then you're seeing like Bloomington and Columbus and Nashville. Those are kind of clustered together. So again, these are certainly things that were not our intent. That was just organically what happened. I think that we also evolved the program to make sure that we had also an added component to build capacity in communities for moving towards that designation. We felt really bad about folks that didn't get designated but went through this huge application process. So if they didn't quite make it, but they made it far enough, they were designated as a spotlight community. And I love this adorable little logo. But really the focus and the purpose of this conversation is just to let you know, because there's been interest from commissioners about cultural districts, and there's been questions, like how many cultural districts where there'll be, and we're designated, now what? What's the long-term game here? What are the metrics? What's the impact? Or as a community looking to develop the arts, what can you do for us, IAC? How can you help? And we're like, well, I don't know, just kidding. But those are pretty fundamental, and I think I was really astute in describing it as value proposition questions. So I guess this is yet another thing that we're bringing to you that we're like, we need to start thinking about this. Really, we do. Because we offer the program every other year, and outside of the pandemic, really September is around the time of year this year that we will relaunch the program. So longitudinally, we don't have to answer these questions in 2 months or 2 minutes, or but it's something that we need to start really thinking about. I'm listening to the executive committee conversation. Chad brought up a really good point. There are no resources attached specifically under the legislation. And I know innovation districts just were passed. So just throwing it on the table for food for thought, because we do have 12 culture districts. We don't really know what the long-term game is. There are a lot of communities in this state, barring the creative community pathway element of the process. There's really no specific direction on how to help them move towards this particular economic, community, and tourism development strategy. Just checking it out there. So I know a study group might be good to, and I know Walter in his now regretting enthusiastic statement might be interested in being a part of that, but I would love to maybe usher forward more input from the commission. Thoughts?
I posed the question in the committee about the resources, because I think that, in the initial wave of being involved, I went back to our community and tried to get some folks to buy into going through the application process, and there just wasn't the momentum that I assumed there would be, because I thought that would be, but it was difficult to make the value proposition. And so I remembered that legislation in 2019, and it seemed to me that that's something that we as an organization could help push along if there's, in order to elevate these sorts of things, and really to go back to our conversation to diversify the areas that they appear across the state.
Mm-hmm. So do we have other commissioners that would be interested in supporting being on the study group with Walter, who's right now a study group of one?
I'll help Walter out.
Right.
My man.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Chad. All right, awesome.
Yeah, group, excellent.
So I am remiss in that I did not build in a break here. And so we do have a few more items. I want to make sure they get their proper moment and that people aren't, so do we need to take a couple minute break for people to stretch their legs, or is everybody okay?
We're okay.
Everybody okay? All right. Just want to put that out there. So
All right.
Question.
Yeah, so keep going.
Aren't there other cities that have applied for culture district designation that have not been granted? And isn't there a term that we put on those places? And I can't remember the
That's
term.
a spotlight community.
A spotlight community.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I was looking for.
And there are a number of communities that have applied that haven't been designated. It's not a whole bunch, maybe 14. And there are a number of communities that applied like 3 times and finally got designated.
Well, I think for validity from us, we can't just have that many people waiting that meet qualifications and just call them spotlight communities. I mean, maybe we need to look at that whole
Do you tell them what
picture.
they're lacking?
Oh, yeah.
Like the Kokomo, Goshen, like the almost, you just missed it?
They get like a 10-page report.
Oh, okay.
And then with also recommendations, examples, further resources, and then meet with, set up a meeting with the group and provide all of that and share and have a feedback session. So that's the capacity building component. So it's a really high value, and they have been leveraging, because I get the phone calls from them. You're like, when are you going to open it up again? You know,
So all these spotlight communities are doing what they need to do in hopes of getting to become labeled as a cultural district.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that is a stumbling block for them is the branding identity.
Right.
You know, to make that unique to who they are. That's a real struggle point for folks. But yeah, they have a roadmap to leverage.
In some of the documentation, you also kind of connected the dots between a potential relationship between gentrification and cultural districts. And so I think another thing to be sensitive to is, as we're helping to build these, we have a responsibility to help navigate those conversations as well, and to make that a priority for the state, not just the Arts Commission, but.
Yeah, that has been certainly an unintended consequence, and other state programs are addressing that in their programs as well. In fact, I think an added question to their other state agency application process is, how will you address the potential for gentrification? Because it's something to think about.
Great conversation. Are we ready to move on? Next, Connie with the Indiana Arts Homecoming Next Steps and Fee Establishment.
Yes, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. So for the last 5 years, Indiana Arts Homecoming has been the primary capacity building program for the field. It's been a multi-day conference, the first 3 years taking place in person, and the last 2 years taking place virtually because of the pandemic. And with that shift to virtual, we have removed all fees from the previous 2 conferences for attending. Given what we've learned over the last 5 years, the demonstrated need for some more targeted areas of education, and also the need to be flexible amid changing public health conditions over the coming year, we are recommending that the Indiana Arts Homecoming fee for this year moved from a multi-day conference to a series of one-day learning labs or symposiums that focus on a single topic. The intent is that these will occur in person, and because of that, we will be returning to a fee structure for attending these, though the goal is to keep that as minimal as possible and to not exceed $75 for each of those one-day symposiums. There's more information in the memos provided, but I wanted to open the floor to any questions about what I've shared or anything that is in the memo.
So, sorry, I haven't read the memo.
No, that's all right.
Where you think this would take place in Indianapolis again?
One of the great advantages of having multi-day conferences taking place at different times is that we'd like to see them take place in different places around the state. The first that is planned is the Arts Integration Learning Lab with Stephanie Haynes, and that will likely take place in Indianapolis, but our goal is that others will take place in different communities.
We should be back to you in June with more info on that. And the reason the commission is voting on this, why this is an item of action, is basically because of our new meeting policy and state policy. Anything that requires a fee has to be voted on. and cannot be voted on as part of a consent agenda, which is why this is out for discussion and vote. Fun fact. You go on with your day.
Excellent. Any other questions or discussion from commission?
I do think if we're going to return to fees, then we need to also look for ways to ensure that fee is not a roadblock. This is probably very clear to everyone, but we need to make sure we are addressing that very directly.
Absolutely. And in past Indian Arts Homecomings where there was a fee to attend, that was explored thoroughly and scholarships were offered, and that is the intent again in the future.
Good question. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the plan for 2022 fiscal midterm.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Stephanie, would you call the roll?
Yes, thanks. Chad?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Walter?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey? Aye. Alan?
Aye.
Sophia? Aye. Dusty?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And now, the other Ann, with our Regional Arts Partnership update.
Yeah, so I'm used to being the other Ann in the room, and that was third Ann in the room. Anyway, so thank you for, of course, letting me be here today. The Regional Arts Partners presented the Arts for All IDEA workshop series in January and February, kind of as I had presented in December. We had over 150 people from across the state present at the 3-day webinar series. And those weren't 3 consecutive days, those were 3 different Wednesdays. But again, we focused on inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And so we worked with Dr. Pascal Lasambe from United Front Fort Wayne. He developed the content for the presentation. So our first presentation was really setting the stage for almost the biological impetus for bias and why that exists, and also kind of starting to explore belonging. And then the second workshop was specifically on belonging and barriers to belonging and how kind of they fit within an organizational setting. And so for the first 2 workshops, Dr. Lasambe gave, his great presentation, and then we had a series of different breakout discussions that were led by the Regional Arts Partners. So we kind of broke out based on regions and then had smaller group discussions, and then would come back to the presentation and kind of talk about what we were learning or what we had experienced. The third workshop then kind of helped put it all together, where we invited 3 different panelists who worked for organizations that were kind of at different stages in the kind of implementing IDEA strategies in their work. And so Dr. Lasambe and I worked with them to kind of, prep and have a great series of questions, that all the panelists answered. Throughout the whole series, I will say I was super impressed by our participants' willingness to actually participate in the webinar. It was amazing to actually have people raise their hands, virtually, and to give comments or share their own stories. It was really, I think, a lot of people felt the same way. We had a lot of great feedback about how it was the most engaging presentation of this nature that they have experienced so far, especially during the pandemic when everything's online. So all in all,
If I could guide us through new business, because we've got several items and I have jotted them down. So I think I'm going to turn to Stephanie Haynes and ask her to give us the Poetry Out Loud update.
Yeah. We don't often get to do direct programming in the work that we do. We fund people and they do great programming. But one of the things we do get to do is the Poetry Out Loud program. We directly engage with schools and students, and we invite schools to host competitions at the school level for poetry recitation. This is a national program we participate in through the National Endowment for the Arts, who hosts it nationally. And then we host the state finals. We organize it. We talk to every student. I did a one-on-one with every student participant to make sure they were ready to go for a virtual Zoom poetry recitation. It's a really exciting, different kind of program we get to do. And I'm going to show you, it just happened on Wednesday evening. Wednesday was like the busiest day of our lives. It was the grant deadline and Poetry Out Loud state finals. Let's start with the video, if you don't mind, Chapin. We didn't really discuss the order of events here. I'm first going to show you a video that we had created highlighting one of my favorite, I probably shouldn't say that, schools, participants, but one of the most robust participants in the state in Ferdinand, Indiana, in Du Bois County. They have every student in that high school doing a poetry recitation. Every single high school student in that school does one in one of their English classes. All the English teachers participate. That is a very rare situation. Usually it's a small club or one single teacher who does it. But we love this school, we love their enthusiasm, and so we send a video crew down to the school to capture what's happening, the magic that's happening down at Forest Park Junior Senior High School, and I'm going to show you that first.
Poetry Out Loud is a part of an ancient tradition of interaction and public presentation and sharing meaning in a beautiful way.
Hi, my name is Brooke Donhauer. I am an English teacher here at Forest Park High School. Poetry Out Loud is a national arts education program. Students work on public speaking skills, but in a different way. Every student at Forest Park is involved with Poetry Out Loud, but it doesn't have to be that way. Some schools have Poetry Out Loud clubs that are after-school programs. We work on skills in the classroom to dissect that poem and analyze it a little bit more. Then we move on to the school-wide competition where we bring in community members and have more community involvement. Students move on to state and then national competition.
Violins by Rowan Ricardo Phillips. He never saw a violin, but he saw a lifetime of violence. This is not to presume that if he had simply seen a violin, he would have seen less violence. More of one thing doesn't rhyme with one thing. A swill of stars doesn't rhyme with star. A posse of poets doesn't rhyme with poet. We are all in prison. This is the brutal lesson of the 21st century. Swilled like a sour stone from the vein of the beast who watches you while you eat. Our eternal host, the chum fiddler, the better tomorrow, 2016.
Isn't that great? This gives me a little bit of chills. Yeah, so the students, the high school students choose poems from an anthology of professional poetry, and they memorize it, they learn the meaning. They have to demonstrate evidence of understanding of the tone and content of the poem, and they do public speaking and as they recite it on stage. So that's the Poetry Out Loud program, and we hosted the state finals. 15 schools had school champions that they sent to the state finals. And we have one state finalist as of Wednesday who will move on to nationals representing our state.
Yeah, it is. Let's see.
Are we going? Okay. Oh, I just also mentioned the Poetry Foundation is a major funder of the program, and the National Endowment for the Arts organizes it all with us. All 50 states plus US territories are involved nationally. Here are our 15 state finalists that participated on Wednesday. They all came, they all did a fantastic job. It was one of our best state finals I've ever seen. So really excited for that. Here are all the schools that participated from the beginning. From these schools, 15 of them, the ones in black, are the ones who sent school champions to the state finals. But we have good geographic representation there. As you can see, we have a little gap in Region 6 that I can't wait to engage some schools there next year. But otherwise, really great representation from across the state and from small and larger schools. Last year, as we went virtual, instead of sending big, heavy glass trophies to the winners, I pivoted and commissioned an artist to create an artwork that we would give as the award. Much easier to mail. And also just a great opportunity to support artists across the state. Taj Mullins is from Evansville. This year we also did a new thing where we did a student meet and greet. Lucia Walker is last year's, where's the laser? Lucia Walker is last year's state champion, and she was able to come on as my intern for the whole program. Gave just the most amazing perspective as a recent student participant. And one of the things that she wanted to do is provide a social connection, networking time for the young people. So she spearheaded this time to get together, just the students on Zoom and get to know each other. They loved it. And this is Alyssa Gaines. She is our state youth poet laureate. This is a different program that we do not run, but she's amazing too. And we were able to have her as the guest speaker. So here are our winners from Pike High School in Indianapolis. Third place for 2022, Aaliyah Banks. Second place from Columbus, Indiana, Saripa Dacharna Munjuluri. And our winner, Lila Ward from Columbia City, Indiana, Eagle Tech Academy in Whitley County, the 2022 Indiana State Champion. She will be working with the national competition. They're also doing virtual this year one more time. And they're gonna send her recording equipment. She'll record her recitation, and they will stream the finals, the pre-recorded finals in May and June. So we'll send you those links as that happens.
Thank you, Stephanie. Again, this is one of Stephanie's portfolio opportunities, and she did a fantastic job this year. Yes, Greg.
Is there a question in the chat? I see there's something.
Is somebody in chat?
That might have been us communicating.
Yeah.
That was.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. But just want to
I didn't talk about Coach ourselves.
Good, get up here and do that.
I was like, I
Talk
forgot
about
that. We are excited about the winner, but one more thing we're really excited about is the expansion of Poetry Ourselves. So Poetry Out Loud is the main part of the competition that the NEA started 15 plus years ago. Poetry Ourselves is a really new program where students submit their original written poetry. And we've even expanded it beyond written to spoken word poetry this year. And previously, we've got about 8 submissions. Like 3 years ago, we were getting about 8 submissions a year. Last year, we expanded it. We said anyone from any school that's a high school student can submit. We got 56 submissions. I was so excited. This year, we had 170 submissions. We tripled it again. And I was like, I am overwhelmed. I got to get a lot more judges for this program, but it's such an exciting thing. And we got to award 6 students. Usually 1 student walks away the winner with this program, but with the expansion of this program, 6 additional students walked away winners and will get special awards. And I'm just really excited to connect with all these new people. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie.
Well done.
Yeah, it's a great program, and Stephanie does a fantastic job with it. 2 quick things, and then we have an announcement to close. We are hiring in all lanes at all hours at the Arts Commission. Just posted my previous position, Deputy Director of Operations and Strategic Partnerships, has a new and longer name, which hopefully means it's more attractive to people. That position is listed, as well as Connie's, the replacement for Connie's old position, Communications Manager. Plus, we have Contracts and Financial Operations, which is Chapin's old position, is posted. Those 3 positions are posted, as well as 2 interns. We are hiring 2 Governor Summer interns, 1 in programming and 1 in communications. The contracting and the 2 intern positions close next Thursday. The communications manager and the deputy director position close the 31st of March. So please let folks know. We'll do a little post communication, QBM communication, and I will include some information about that, but please let folks know about that. Next to last item of business, our June meeting will be in Indianapolis. That is a super important one. They're all important, but that's a super important one because it's when we approve annual budget, as well as our grant recipients. So we'll be.
The date of that?
I think it's on the last slide, but is it the 10th?
That's why it said June. Yes.
Yes, it's June 10th. June 10th. Yeah, that's the June meeting. And then our September meeting, we think we'll be on the road down south. So more to come. We'll announce more about that in June. So anyway, so those are details upcoming. Libby, are you with us? I want to hand this over to Libby for a second.
Well, I always speak of idea, Indiana, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. So the only thing about IAC that I would say is that please, when you do your studies and your actual implementation, do not see diversity as something of people of color, people who are not. So that's just what I want to say. Just make sure that you constantly remember to integrate. Not strategies for this or strategy for that, but they connect it. Well, what I have to say is not something I want to say. I'm resigning and I'm moving back to Boston, where I have family. And I love my time with the commission. I love my time living in Indiana, but without Peter, I don't know if everybody knew it. My husband died 6 months ago. I just can't stay here. So thank you so much for the 5 years of comradeship, friendship, and just hugs. So, but Maya knows that I'm always on call if you need to back the head or something, take it out. I can be a scapegoat. I can say things like maybe you can't say. We all know what that means, right? Non-government people. So again, goodbye, and I hope I get invited to things because my doctors are still here, so I will still be coming back. So
we miss you already.
Yeah. And I wrote to Libby when she let us know and said, she embodies a great commissioner in that she's supportive, but she pushed us and she course corrected us when we needed it. She was always a great source of support, but also a great support offered us so much great counsel and when we needed it. So just want to, Libby, again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for your service. And no, we especially in this work that we're heading into related to equity and the regional system, we're going to need your input and we value it. So appreciate your service. Can we? Libby, we'll send information about how to contact Libby, her email and so forth, so that we can stay in touch. But Libby's always going to be part of the IC family, I guarantee you. So Libby, we love you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, we love you, lady. We love you. And that's all the new business that we've got.
Well, thank you so much, Libby, on behalf of the commission. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and work alongside you, and you will absolutely be missed. So thank you. And sorry to have to end with that because it's very disappointing for us.
Yes,
but totally, completely understand. So thank you so much for your service, Libby.
Let's celebrate Libby's service and then celebrate the fact that we're all together and we've appreciated. And thinking about all together, I will never forget the wonderful evening the commissioners had at Dusty's home several years back when with Chef Libby creating a magnificent Chinese banquet dinner. And that's one of the joys of coming together as a commission at these quarterly business meetings. And so Libby and Dusty provided an amazing experience for us. And we're coming back together now. So there are opportunities now to build other great memories of us gathering together. So Libby, love you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, I think that concludes our business. I will take a motion to adjourn. We have Do we have to call a roll or something? We just.
Nope, we're good.
Excellent.
Nice job, Ann. Thank you.
Bye.